Longhorns, yeah. You like USC? Yeah.
It's a whole nother game.
It's the biggest game of the year.
You like USC? Yeah. I know that's right. We're gonna play football. Yes.
My view of the first down was it was that short.
Ohio State wins. Wide left.
Burrow said, time to fit me for that ring.
Alabama wins.
He's going for the corner. He's got it.
For the past 105 years, the Rose Bowl in Pasadena has been the enduring image of sunshine and renewal, ritual and legacy. The biggest and most important stage. Weaving a century of school tradition, what the Rose Bowl represents is bigger than the game, bigger than the teams. It defines what tradition really means.
What's up, college football fans? Guess what day it is? It's Throwback Thursday, and we are kicking off the very first ever college football Throwback Thursday with one of the greatest games of all time, maybe the greatest game of all time. It's the game between Texas and USC deciding a national championship, the 2006 Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all. It all came down to one play, and guess what? We have the woman who was on the sidelines for that game, little Miss Holly Rowe. How are you doing?
Hi, how are you? I'm looking at your background. I love that you have a football, but I want to know about the belt. What is the WWE belt? What is happening?
That was signed and given to me by Ric Flair, and so it goes with me absolutely everywhere. So obviously it has to be in the shot right now to remind us that we're heavyweights, right?
Woo! All right.
Yeah. And okay, so we have a heavyweight matchup to talk about. But Holly, first, I want you to tell us how many games you've been on the sideline for, or years you've been covering college football, and how this game in particular compares to all of them.
So I've been doing college football for 25 years now for ESPN. This will be my 25th season if we have one coming up. And I would say this is the greatest. You know, people ask me all the time, what is the greatest game you've ever worked? And I always say this game. And it was for a lot of different reasons. One, because I was obsessed with the Rose Bowl when I was a little kid. Like me and my dad used to watch the Rose Bowl every day, every January 1st when it would come on. And so I loved the Rose Bowl. And I had really watched some of the great USC Rose Bowl games through the years. One of my favorites was Anthony Davis, a great running back in the day for the Trojans. So one, I already loved the Rose Bowl. Two, this game had more hype than any game I've ever covered. You know, we've covered big games. This was the most hyped game I can ever remember, and many people say it was the game of the century.
Well, I would totally agree with you. And Holly, first of all, I was a freshman in college when this game happened, and I just remember, you know, you're starting to be in the belly of the beast of college football, going to Georgia, so you're in the South, and I'm learning that it is a lifestyle. It is not a sport. And I remember watching this game with my whole family. You know, you're having your black-eyed peas for good luck. You know, you're eating your greens for good fortune. And just being in awe of the entire game and thinking to myself, like, okay, this is where it's at. Like, this was the game that opened my eyes, I would say. And now looking back on it, I was probably watching the game of the century that made me want to eventually work in college football, now that I think about it.
You got the taste of it. It's like it was so special. It got into your heart and into your soul, and now you love it. And it was like that. The Rose Bowl is obviously the granddaddy of them all for a reason, but there were a couple of other really cool things around the game. Is USC had been number one wire to wire from the beginning of the season to the end, and Texas had been number two wire to wire. So it was very unusual that these two teams had not stumbled. And back in that time, it was very unusual to go through the seasons undefeated. And then you add in that it was also Keith Jackson's last game. He had announced his retirement. He was kind of the king of the Rose Bowl. So there was just all these elements, and then all the celebrities that wanted to be there at the game. It was just hype city. Snoop Dogg. Okay. I don't think Snoop Dogg would be there. It was so big.
Okay, I like the idea of painting the picture for everyone. So let's go back and do that. You brought it up. Okay, USC is undefeated. Texas is undefeated. USC has won back-to-back national championships coming into this game. They had won 34 straight games, right? Texas, they went to Ohio State for the first time that season, pulled out a 3-point victory. There was a close game between Notre Dame and USC, but same thing, USC pulls out the game. And I was reading an article today, Holly, and Vince Young said that they had just finished up a game and they all go back into the locker room to watch USC Notre Dame and start cheering for USC. Like, they want them to win. They wanted to meet them at the end of the season for a national championship.
Right, because that's all roads had been leading to this game, and everybody had been so excited for it. So I think everybody wanted that matchup and wanted two undefeated teams, you know, because they could see what was special on the horizon. So these two great teams, and they were great teams, were on a collision course. And then I think a couple of other things that really led to the intrigue of this game is the Heisman Trophy ceremony had happened. And both Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush were finalists. Reggie Bush ended up winning the Heisman Trophy. And I did the Heisman Trophy ceremony that year. And so I got to interview Reggie's mom, and Matt Leinart was there. He had won the Heisman the year before. And Vince Young was not happy that he did not win the Heisman. And so I want to do something funny here, because I went in my file this morning and I found my notes.
I love it.
These are my actual. I have saved them all these years later. And one of my notes in here is about that Vince Young addressed the team after the Heisman. He told them that he was disappointed that it was on, and he got a standing ovation. And that disappointment of not winning the Heisman fueled him, and his team got behind them, and they were mad. And so all of those, you know, it's like one plot line after another plot line after another, building into the magic of this game.
It's like the building blocks of college football. Can we just review for a second the fact that you still have the notes from a game in 2006? Hold them up, please.
Oh, here's my notes. And I'm really excited about it, because I have 18 storylines that I pitched to my producer. So 18 different stories. I'll tell you some of them as we go.
I was going to say, give us your best story. Can you give me like 2 or 3 of them off that board right now? The best storylines you had going into this game, Holly.
Yeah, I think that one. I think that one was probably one of them. That the Vince Young meeting with his team and the Heisman disappointment was probably one of my top teams or top stories. And then let me think.
In my mind, while you look, in my mind, Holly, Vince Young is saying, "Forget fight on, it's on. Like, let's go," and they all like get up and go nuts around.
Oh yes. I don't know if we can say that on Twitter or whatever.
Very mad.
I said it. My open for the game, and I think our viewers will see this open coming up if they don't cut it out, is I did an open about the Vince vibe, about how Vince Young just had this loose vibe about him. And he had really relaxed Mac Brown. I mean, Mac Brown's kind of a fun, loose guy, but he can get tight. And through the whole course of this season, it was Vince and this vibe that had really kept Coach loose. He had asked that they could have music at practice. Like they started doing music at practice, and Texas hadn't done that before. And Mac was like, wait, what are we doing? But Vince pushed it and had this vibe. He pushes to see if they will push back. We relax, we have fun. He gives the team energy, confidence, and focus. He asked the right to bring music into the locker room before practice and games, to sing and to dance on the team bus. I told everybody I'm a quarterback for life, said Vince Young, but now maybe they'll believe me. So it was just his vibe and his spirit. And when the game started, I remember being on the sideline. You know the coach's box? Like, we stand on the 25-yard line because we're only allowed right. I was standing on the 25-yard line, and Vince Young is literally 2 feet away from me. And the first time he ran to go into that game, he looked at me and he was like winked at me like, I got this. I got this. It was so cool. I will never forget the craziness of this game. And Vince just looks at me. He's like, I got this. Don't you worry.
I just need everyone at home to try to mock your wink. Like,
it's a bad wink. I'm not a good wink.
Bad wink. Okay, we've built up the scene. We know what storylines you have going into the game. Okay, granddaddy of them all. And if you've never been to the Rose Bowl and you're a college football fan, like, put it on your list of things to do. Like, just go there and feel it. You know what I mean? I don't care what team's playing. I don't care what's going on. Like, that is the most pristine. I call it majestic every time I walk in there. But it just feels like it's bigger than this game every time you walk into that stadium.
Yeah, and there's something about the setting too. So it's nestled in these mountains in Pasadena, and as sun sets over the Rose Bowl, and right around kickoff, it's getting ready, and the sky gets pink and purple, and the mountains are purple behind it. And it is just the most eerie, and it gets a little misty, and you literally feel like you're in a dream. It is so beautiful. And then I have my earpieces in, and I could hear Keith Jackson, and as he is painting that picture for the fans at home, it's really special. And one other kind of cool thing was I had slept out on the parade route at the Rose Bowl before, and gone to the Rose Parade, and then gone to the Rose Bowl with my dad as a kid because I loved the Rose Bowl so much. And so my dad took me. And I got to work that game, and I brought my dad, and he was sitting in the stand with my son. And so, my dad that made me love college football, I got to bring him back to this best Rose Bowl ever. And as it turned out, it was the final game I ever got to go to with my dad. He passed away not long after. So it was just like, of all these special, it was the most special because of my childhood and my dad.
Yeah, well, it's something that you'll certainly always remember. I love that you bring up Keith Jackson too, and hearing his voice, but you mentioned it right before we went on that there was a pretty special tease that was drummed up for this game.
Oh my God. So the best part, I mean, the game was epic. The game did not disappoint. These two offenses that were the best offenses in college football, the game did not disappoint. But the tease was the best tease ever because, both programs have these big celebrities. So Will Ferrell for USC was a huge Trojan fan, still is, always would go to practice. And Matthew McConaughey, who we now know is the Minister of Culture for Texas. So this was his pre-minister days. But I have never laughed so hard as that when watching this tease. Just take a look.
Football is king in Texas. We thrive on it. And after we won the Rose Bowl last year, the entire state knew we were getting back to where we expect to be, which is where we are right now. About to win our first national championship in 35 years.
Now just hold on a second there, cowboy. This may be your first rodeo in a while, but for USC fans, it's our third national title game in 3 years. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that is percentage-wise. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I bet you it's pretty good. What's that? 100%? Wow, that is good. Yeah, 100%. Didn't know that.
But Will, for the first time all year, you're facing a team with a higher scoring average and a defense that's ranked 6th. So you're 39th.
What'd you say? I can't hear you. I have a Heisman in my ear.
It's a beautiful trophy, well-deserved. Congratulations. But I don't think you're going to have a chance to be pushing your quarterback over the goal line to win this one.
I still can't hear you, Matthew. Seems I have a Heisman in the other ear as well. Hey, yo, Reggie, Matt, this trophy smells like a waffle.
Yeah, well, at least our mascot represents our great state.
Southern California Trojans. Hello? Yeah! Trojans. What's up, man? All right, so now what?
Let's settle it on the field.
Yes, the field. The way extremely fit, unemployed students seeking a higher education often do. It's USC.
It's Texas.
The Rose Bowl, man. Winner gets a big batch of roses and a glass football. Who doesn't want that? Yeah! Come on! I'm gonna go straight Disneyland.
So that is the all-time greatest tease ever. I can't hear you. I have a Heisman in my ear. That is the best tease.
Hey, but he has 2 Heismans in his ear. Great.
Yeah, I can't hear you. I have another Heisman.
And on the field for my team today. I'm sorry, that's not a problem you have. That's a problem that I have. Okay, so take me now. We've got through the tease. We've set the scene, the majesty of Pasadena and the Rose Bowl, and kickoff happens. And it's never going to be pretty football when you have as much time off as they have. And I think I looked back and Texas fumbled the ball 4 times, and it wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it all came together and made sense. So when the ball gets kicked off, like what do you start to remember about those first 2 quarters, the first half of this game?
So I've got to tell you one quick story about Matthew McConaughey right before the game. So they had come out with this ruling. The NCAA had to get involved, and they had this ruling that because so many celebrities wanted to be on the field, and the schools, of course, didn't want to say no to the celebrities. So the NCAA had to come out with this ruling that unless you had been a student athlete at that school, you couldn't be on the sideline. And so Roger Clemens got to be on the Texas sideline. I think a few other guys that had played at USC got to be over there. But Matthew McConaughey could not be on the sideline. So he had a credential in his jacket pocket, but it was just for the pregame. And he had it tucked in his pocket. And I'm standing right next to him, and this little security lady comes over, like bangs straight across, like Spanish haircut, just very, very serious lady. And she's like, "Sir, I need to see your pass." And in the most charming Matthew McConaughey way, he goes, "Darling, it's right here." And he thinks good. And he goes back to watching the game, and she stands right there and looks up at him like, "I need to see your pass." And she kicked him off the sideline. So even after McConaughey's charm could not keep him off.
Not at the greatest game of all time. You don't just get to be down here on the sidelines for this.
"Darling, my pass is
boom, 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 boom." That just takes me back to Wall Street right now. Okay, now that Holly has taken us all the way sideways, take me back to the first half.
Back to the game.
Yeah.
So there were things in the game. This is years later. I talked to Matt Leinart about this, and he always will say to people that his greatest regret in that game happened in the first quarter. So USC was up. They were up 7-0, and they were kind of rolling. They had kind of gotten into a rhythm, and they are going for it on fourth down. I think inside or right on their 20-yard line in the first quarter. And if they go up 14-0, I mean, that's a very different ball game. And Texas stops them on fourth down. And that, it was like Texas woke up, and their defense came to play. And this was a really good defense that people hadn't, I don't think they had gotten nearly the credit that USC had throughout the course of the season. So they had a little chip on their shoulder. So that stop by the Texas Longhorns would go on to be, I think, one of the key moments in the game.
Yeah, I mean, it was a game with two great offenses, essentially. I mean, there were over 1,100 yards in this game. And you knew coming in that USC, we talked about it, we have Heisman in both ears. So if you got Reggie Bush and you got Matt Leinart and you got a team that can score 50 points a game and get 500 yards a game, eventually there's going to have to be a stop. And you're right, that was one that made a complete difference. What changed? What was different? How did Texas start to get on their roll? Because you mentioned it, that it started out USC. It seemed like they were just kind of rolling and making things work.
Yeah. Okay. So forgive me, because I wanted to go to my notes here, because there's kind of a story about that. Is, obviously they wanted to do something different because people have scouted them all season long. So their offensive coordinator, Greg Davis, here are my notes that I wrote down from his meeting. He said, "We like to tinker, but we have to be careful. There's a reason you're here. We have to dance with the one that brought you. And so we will make some subtle changes, but we are also going to run some plays, some different passes that they haven't seen." And he said, "They have not seen us run the zone read play where we read the end. Georgia and West Virginia, we've got to give them some zone read early and find out how they'll stop it." So I really think that zone read, which was still sort of, I don't want to say super new in college football, but it was kind of in its impetus of these running quarterbacks that could read the linebacker or the end. And so Vince Young doing the zone read, I think, is what got that game kind of rolling from the Longhorn perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're so right. I bet when we go back and watch this game, like as we're watching it, we're going to remember how much the game has changed over the course of time. You know what I mean? Like it was like, oh, it's like a normal thing to see 50 points scored by both teams now. Like that's just what happens every single day or whatever. But it was a little bit different then. It was still great football, but it's different.
It was. And these two offenses, I think why everybody was so excited about these teams. So these two offenses, USC had scored 600 points. Texas had scored 611 points on the season. So some of the highest scoring offenses ever. They had both rushed for over 3,100 yards as a team. And they had 5 players with more than 70 carries. So this was still kind of, in some ways, an old school running teams, but with the zone read player for USC and Vince Young. But the running backs, it was all this talent at running backs. So Reggie Bush, of course, who I think will go down as one of the best college football players ever.
Yeah.
But they also had Lendell White, who was like, it was like thunder and lightning. Like Reggie had all this pizzazz and could move, but Lendell was a hammer, and he played very well in this game and ended up having maybe one of the best games. I think he had over 120 yards in this Rose Bowl, and he was kind of the hammer for USC.
You know what? All of this talk about the players reminds me that we had incredible personalities on the sideline. We talked about Mac Brown a little bit, but Pete Carroll on the other sideline, and you got so many notes in front of you. I really kind of like low-key just want you to look at them and tell me if you have a good Pete Carroll quote or story for the USC sideline, because these were two great coaches too.
These were two, and Pete Carroll at this time in college football was rolling. He had USC rolling, and I don't really want to bring it up, but just to be factually correct, they did end up going on probation, and technically in the NCAA record books, USC did not win this or did not play in this game. You know, they had to finish this season 0-0 because of NCAA sanctions, which is kind of a bummer, but he had it rolling, and he was a little bit like Mac Brown in that he was loose, man. Pete Carroll was fun. He would play these pranks on his team. For Halloween, he would play these elaborate pranks. He got up on top of a building by practice and was like yelling at the team, and then went back and then threw a dummy over the side. I mean, this guy was out there. He was out there, and LA loved it and ate him up, but he could really coach football. And I remember being at the USC practice, and what sticks out to me is they would put all of their 5-star recruits on the scout team. And so they would run, so they'd leave their football office, they would run full speed. The coaches, the players, everybody ran to practice, and they would run. It was going like this constantly. And they were running these scout teams, but they were against 5-star. I remember counting up like 20 5-star kids on the scout team during that time period for USC. So just loaded with talent.
Hey, and all the practices were loaded with celebrities, right? Did you ever go to a USC practice and just turn around and say, oh, God, yeah, that is Will Ferrell. Like, we're just hanging out at practice together.
Oh, and like Snoop Dogg was like all around. Like Snoop, the Snoop Dogg was not famous enough to get to be on the USC sidelines for this game. I think Harry Winkler, like maybe Fonzie. I think if I remember that right, Fonzie was trying to be there. He was down there pregame. So it was crazy.
Yeah, they should have been sneaking on trying to be water boys or something for the game. Okay, take me to the ending of the game. You know how you can feel it as a sideline reporter? Like you can feel every moment leading to this. And it seemed like it was all leading to Vince Young having a Heisman moment post-Heisman, you know what I mean? And ended up winning that national championship. Talk about the build-up to that. What were you feeling? What were you seeing on the sideline?
Yeah, they were down. I think the score, if I remember it right, it was 38-26 with 6:42 to go in the game. Texas was down in this game, and they had to come back. It wasn't just his only run at the end. They had to score twice in the end of that game, and they were just calm. It was not panic, but they had pace. They were playing with such great pace. And early in that game, I think you guys might see on the game tonight, we actually did a sideline report about it. A ton of Texas players had to get IVs. Something like 8 players had to get IVs at halftime just because they were cramping so bad. And there'd been a long layoff, and then they play another game, and the adrenaline spikes, and so they had some cramping issues. So Texas got IVs at halftime, and they just came out and kind of got on a roll late in that game. But I want to show you this picture. So you see this?
I see it.
The nerd that I am,
okay.
I did say the front page picture from USA Today from that game that I saved in my files all these years. And this is Vince. Can you see that Vince diving over? That's Vince diving over.
Are you in the picture?
I don't know if I'm in the picture. I never thought to look for that. I should be, because I was standing on
you're where the ball is.
Yeah, I was standing on the guard line. And Vince literally ran right past me. I was standing next to Lee Corso. He ran right past me to go into the end zone. But I did an event recently with Vince Young, and we talked about that moment. And he said, what's really amazing is we had practiced that play before we left home from Austin. Is everybody thinks that just happened and that Vince Young just made that magic? And he did. He had to make the read and had to make the magic. But they had practiced that play before they left Austin, which I just think is so cool. Is in this biggest moment ever, they were prepared. It all went down to being prepared.
Well, Holly, every time I talk to you, I feel like I learned something new. And today I learned that your house should be a college football Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
We need to get all of your notes archived, all of the press clippings that you have put up somewhere. Look at that. She still has her board.
Here's my
And
game board.
by the way,
talk about this is good. So Michael Huff, you know Michael Huff. Remember?
I know Michael Huff. He never wears sleeves, Holly. He never wears sleeves.
He wants to show off his guns, and I asked him, he's like, I got to show the young guys what they work for. Like, he has to show his guns. But one really cool story, he won the Thorpe Award this year, and one of the really cool things is he would make up plays on his Xbox so that he would have to learn how to stop the plays. So he was one of the preeminent film study kids ever in college, and his coach, Dwayne Aquino, would always tell me he is the best I've ever coached. And I don't just throw that out there. But I really think that having Michael Huff, he was one of the leaders in this secondary. Cedric Griffin, they had great linebackers too. Robert Killebrew, Aaron Harris, Rashad Bobino. And then their front, their line, Frank Oakham and Rodriguez Wright, they were great. Good ends. There's just too much. There's just too much. I'm sorry.
But you've shared it all. Like, honestly, now all everyone has to do is sit back, relax, get their Vince vibe on, wink at the TV, and watch, like, one of the greatest games of all time. And the good news is that this is going to keep on happening every Thursday for the foreseeable future. We want you to continue to enjoy the game, enjoy college football. And, Holly, what do you have to say to everyone that's going to get a chance to watch this game again tonight? What are they going to walk away with?
Worth seeing it over again, because what we know now about college football and where the game went after this, I just think it's this moment in time that was important in college football. Just to Keith Jackson call his last game is precious and special. It is, in my mind, the greatest college football game that I've ever been a part of, and I think that many people have ever seen. And one last really cool story that actually Matt Brown told me yesterday. We were on the phone talking about this game and the replay that's about to happen. So they get to the locker room and they're celebrating and dancing and everything. And Matt Brown gave this really cool speech in the locker room. And he said, "This is amazing. You're the best team in the country. It's precious. But don't let this be the most important thing that ever happens to you in your life." And I thought that was such good advice, is don't let this be the only special thing in your life. Let this be one of the great memories you have. And as he went to leave the locker room after he gives this great speech, Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush are there waiting for him. And they said, "Coach, we missed you on the field. In all that chaos, we couldn't find you, but we wanted to tell you good game and congratulations." And I just think these two Heisman Trophy winners, in their moment of greatest defeat, that they were that classy. I think that is a great behind the scenes anecdote that is precious for people to hear.
And you know what, Holly, I couldn't think of a better way to kind of wrap up, because the game that we love is college football, and it's filled with amazing people. You mentioned it, people that have class and people that are ultimately role models. So we just get to take a peek into 4 quarters of a game, but they've gone on and done great things with their lives too. But we hope that everyone sits back, relaxed, and enjoys the ride of our first Throwback Thursday. You're not going to have any more behind the scenes. Holly's giving it all to you. You know what was going on behind the scenes. You know that Matthew McConaughey was on there. Snoop Dogg couldn't get there. We're going to send out, hey, take a picture of your board so we can tweet it out so everyone can read it as they're watching the game. And we'll be live tweeting too. So join in the conversation with us and let us know some of your favorite moments as well. Hopefully we'll see you again and continue to join us on Thursdays for our throwbacks. We appreciate you guys. Stay safe at home.
What? I can't hear you. I have a Heisman in my ear.
I'm sorry. I have two.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.